Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to our PAX West 2023 recap special episode. And this episode, we're doing exactly what it says on the tin. This year, PAX West 2023 was a lot of fun, but I wouldn't know how it compared to other years because this was my first year going, but it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, in an incredible case of, irony, if I'm using irony correctly, or maybe I'm not. The last two PAX specials, both east of this year and west of last year, I attended solo. And now this is the exact mirror opposite, whereas I was unable to attend PAX West of 2023, so Geoff went. And so it's a fun little flip on the formula. And we are going to announce later our next con that we will be at together, finally. Hopefully next year at both PAXs, we will also be attending together as well. But I guess to start, Geoff, how was it? Had you been to Seattle before?
I've never been to Seattle before. It was my first time in Seattle. I actually don't go out to the West Coast a terrible amount. I have family in Las Vegas, so I go there a decent amount, but I think I've been to California like once, maybe twice. The Pacific Northwest was completely unexplored for me, so I really like Seattle. It was very cool. Also, our Uber driver from the airport happened to be someone who lived in Brooklyn most of his life and then moved to Seattle like 10 years prior. It was the best, impromptu, I'm going to point out this geological marvel, this natural thing, this thing about the neighborhoods. I really wish I was more awake to retain more of it, but I got the best impromptu touring of things. It was very cool.
Amazing. That's awesome. Did you get to do any sightseeing with Sarah besides working the con?
Not really. Sarah took most of Saturday off from the con to do some exploring. Also, the Airbnb we stayed in was very near the Space Needle and had roof access. So we definitely had a morning of, take the coffee upstairs and just go, that sure is the Space Needle. It was very cool. I do the same thing living in New York City, that sure is that landmark. So she got to kind of walk around Capitol Hill. I explored some coffee shops.
Nice. Important.
And where the con is near Pike Place. So I'm pretty sure that's where the original Starbucks was, hence the roast.
Yeah.
And, that was certainly the one where they were having union protests. So I'm like, good on ya. But very light sightseeing, mostly convention.
My favorite thing about going to PAX is where I'm going to get coffee that morning as I drag my ass out of bed to go to whatever interview I scheduled way too early. In Seattle, it was nice because sometimes I would just wander off on my own and then go in any direction from the convention center and find a coffee shop that was a mom and pop place I've never heard of and get really good coffee, which you can do in other places, but just something felt right about it in Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. It was at first surprising and then obvious in hindsight of how strong of an espresso culture there is in Seattle. I'm like, oh, that's why Starbucks is the way it is. But I am very much a drip coffee person. I walked past this incredible donut shop every morning, this place called Top Pot. Apparently had a couple locations in Seattle. I can't eat the donuts, but they looked incredible. Sarah finally went there and got one. She confirmed they're incredible. They did a good cold brew.
Nice.
So that was my usual. But yeah, I got to explore a little bit and hit up a couple of places. I think the only other one of note I remember is Ghost Note Coffee. But yeah, you're right. You wander and any coffee shop's going to be a good one. Some of them are incredible, but all of them are going to be good ones.
Yeah, kind of like pizza in New York.
Exactly.
But we're coming up on over 4 minutes and haven't talked about a single video game yet. I feel like our listeners are clawing at their, can you claw at your podcast? I don't know. Anyway.
You give them an opportunity. People will find incredible things to do.
That's true. Before we get into some of the games you saw, you were on a panel. You were on the latest edition of Video Game Trivia hosted by our good friend Jacob McCourt. You were teamed up with our good friend Haley. I'm curious, how did that go? I love Jacob's Video Game Trivia, even when I don't get to be on it. Jacob is a natural, a good game show host. He's got the vibe. I saw he had the little, marketed cards where he could read stuff off of, which I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. So how did that go? It seemed like it was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was incredible fun. I completely agree. Jacob runs a good show.
Yeah.
Working with people. What a goddamn charismatic individual.
Correct.
He's been on the show. Listeners know. Listeners can know. But also just as somebody who has, and Matt as a fellow, who has also done a lot of nightlife, a lot of impromptu or sort of smaller scale audience games or game shows or anything like that. Well structured, too. Yeah. The fact that the last segments were ones that were audience participation in a way of everyone can scream and make as much noise as possible, I think was the best heckling defense ever. Because it's like, don't make a noise now. You can do it later. You will have the space. Hold on to it. And the audience ended up doing a great job. And I went into it like I knew some of what you did when you were on the panel at East, but I was like, no, don't overstudy this. I'm going to go in. If I can't be smart, I could be funny. Treat it like a British panel show. And I think a couple of us had a lot of fun with that. Like the team of Mike Towndrow and Dave Proctor was dangerous, not because of their knowledge of trivia, though they were knowledgeable. They were just dangerous individuals.
Yeah, they're two people who, like, in isolation, I think are kooky and fun. Together, I can't even imagine the kind of chaos they would cause.
Oh, it was great. And again, it's that kind of thing that, you can study video game trivia as much as you want and then go, I know none of this. I was with Jacob during the tech check in the morning, and so while testing things out, he was just pulling up stuff from previous trivia shows, and those are the ones I'm sitting there like, here's 3 pixels of a box. Oh, that's Dr. Robotnik's main bean machine, obviously. Right. Then came time for ours. I'm like, I got nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I was great when I went one-on-one with Case, because of course I was. I love Case, but he's not trivia knowledgeable about video games. But like, I remember in the box art game that Jacob does, he showed the box art for Band Hero, and it was just like the first pixel. And I went, that's Band Hero. And Case and Jacob were both like, what? And I was right. Yet, when I played with the incredible Morgan Shaver, we tanked. We were terrible. And it was fun, but we were awful.
I was apparently frighteningly good at the license plate game.
Yeah.
With the vanity plate, what character is this and what does it say? If I knew the game, I knew it.
Well, it sounds like it was a lot of fun. I know that it's going to be available to watch, the video version, on the Video Game Trivia YouTube channel at some point. But let's talk a little bit about video games. So I guess before talking about some of your favorites, let's talk about the first thing you saw. When you got to the show floor and you were able to go see whatever you wanted, especially during the press hour, what was the first thing you made a beeline for?
The Sega Atlas booth, and I played Persona 3 Reload.
Hell yeah, I knew that was the case.
Well, I mean, also the fact is the show floors were in 2 different buildings, which I'm informed was a new thing.
Yes.
So I went into one of them. Honestly, I actually ran into Jacob while getting my badge. He happened to be in the room, and so it was just one I was like, hey, how's it going? Ran into him, Katie Lesperek, and we just walked over there. So I followed them. Shiny, dumb, and easy to trick.
Yeah.
So we went into the arch and went in there, and the Square Enix booth is right there, and then next to it was the Sega Atlas booth. I wanted to play a lot of things at Sega Atlas. I wanted to play Persona 3 Reload, Persona 5 Tactica, Like a Dragon, The Man Who Erased His Name. I wanted to play Samba de Amigo. And the thing that got me to go straight for Persona 3 Reload was trying any of these demos, you get a free thing.
Yeah, tchotchkes.
You get your swag. Persona 3 Reload had a tote bag. And I went, I'm going to be carrying around a lot of things. This kills so many birds. Single stone. I now have 2 of those. I'm doing all of my grocery shopping in them. But also, it was a great demo. I was already somebody that was very interested in Persona 3 Reload. I was already invested in its success, but I wanted to see how it played and how it felt, and felt great. And the demo did a good job of showcasing how Persona 3 sits in the Persona 5 engine, how it works with the characters, how Tartarus feels. Persona 5, you're going through all the different palaces. It's very cool in different settings, but Persona 3, it's, you are in this tower. You will climb this tower. This tower will change its form every time you go back to it. It is a creature of chaos. But it looks great. It feels great. I'm very excited. And I went back to the Sega Atlas booth a few times throughout the weekend to play the other games. So when I was there, I played Persona 3 Reload and Like a Dragon, The Man Who Erased His Name, and then moved on looking at other stuff. But that was my beeline.
Amazing. And like, I remember when we first talked about Reload, you had some concerns just as a fan of Persona 3, and that like apparently this is not going to have stuff from Persona 3 Portable, which were like new things that they had added. Do you feel more confident in this remake now that you've played it?
Atlas, no matter how much they will re-release things and do, FES, Golden, Royal, whatever versions, there's no definitive version of any of the stuff they release. So I've learned to accept them as they are.
Fair enough.
Yeah, the fact that you don't have the female main character option, or they don't seem to have the answer, the extra chapter from FES, that's fine. It's still going to be a very fun playthrough. It's still going to be a great experience. And maybe they're thinking because Persona 3 Portable is on Steam and everything, that's that experience if you want it. And this is another one. But As far as gameplay loop, as far as any of that, and again, as somebody who is a huge Persona fan that is sharing it with their partner,
right,
and doing it in reverse order. I got Sarah into it through Persona 5. She loves it. And now we're playing Persona 4 Golden, and she is having a great time. And there was a little bit of a bump as far as, okay, these are how the dungeons are. Okay, this is how these things are. Okay, cool. Now I'm into the system. I was kind of really nervous about would we ever play Persona 3 because Mementos is her least favorite part of the Persona 5 experience, and Persona 3 is oops, all Mementos.
Yeah, pretty much.
But tower instead of subway. So this feels better, as well as just, I don't know, something that Sega Atlas does a great job with Persona is making it very cool. And Reload's very cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I do plan on trying to finish Royal during my vacations this winter. But that said, I am excited for Reload. It looks really cool. And I mean, if nothing else, the black magic they used to get Persona 5 Royal to run completely smoothly and incredibly on the Nintendo Switch, like if they can do that again with 3 Reload, like I'm in from the start. I've been looking for an excuse to rebuy Golden on my Switch since I started it on my Steam Deck, but like I might as well have all the Personas on one system, right?
Right.
Completely flawed and unnecessary logic, but nonetheless.
No, I kind of want to get Persona 3 Reload. I think it would be a great Switch game, but all of my Personas on PlayStation.
Yeah.
This is the brain rot that we have. We are not alone in this, but this is what happens.
Before we move on, you did briefly mention one of my other most anticipated games of the year, which there are like 5 of at this point, but the world's worst named video game, although I love it with all my heart, Like a Dragon, The Man Who Erased His Name. I'm very much looking forward to it, excited about it. We're coming from different places. You loved Like a Dragon, which eventually I guess the name will change of, but...
Like a Dragon 7.
Right. You loved that, and you want to play the older games that you haven't yet. And this is a game that's really firmly made for the older game fans. It's the older combat system. It's based around the original main character who kind of went into hiding between games. What were your thoughts as you got hands-on with it? Was it mostly just like a combat demo? Did you just get to see how it played, or was there a little bit of narrative stuff too?
It's a really good vertical slice.
Okay.
Because it's Kiryu Kazuma coming into like essentially a lawless casino area, whatever gold saucer ass thing is, here it is, under whatever assumed name. And well, you're coming in here into this unlawful pleasure palace because you're going to fight in the arena. I've entered you already. And you come in there and there's people that are like, who are you? You're not allowed in here. I'm allowed to be here. Bullshit, you are. Prove it. So you beat them up. And you get to walk around. You get to go to a couple of shops. There's a casino. Look, it was Like a Dragon. In the span of 20 minutes, I got into several ridiculous fights. I dressed in several ridiculous outfits. I played tons of mini games, and I got into a big brawl in an arena, or I started to. You know, I had half of a fight and then had that, like, you know, the punches coming, zooms in, thanks for playing the demo kind of thing.
Right.
It was a very nice encapsulation. And yeah, no, getting used to the shift in play style was honestly way more painless than I figured it would be. And even then, I figured they would do a great job considering how many longtime fans of the Like a Dragon series took to Ichiban Kasuga's JRPG turn-based playstyle.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I know a lot of folks who started with Like a Dragon and that who still played Ishin because it was a separate story, even though it's characters that we love from the other series, it was its own isolated story. So like if you have a base knowledge of Like a Dragon, you can enjoy it. I'm curious with this, which is very much an interquel, very much between stories that you need. I mean, I'm sure they'll set it up or give you some kind of primer for why you're doing what you're doing.
Of course.
I'm just curious about the reception. I mean, that said, the fandom is beyond just the people who played the most recent game, so I'm sure it'll still do great. But I am just curious what people like you and Sarah, who only have the experience with the one game, will think. It's a curious thing, but I'm glad you got to get hands on it. I'm very jealous. Katie also posted about playing it, and I was like, God damn it, you're a new Yakuza fan. It's not fair.
I don't know, were there like combat devices in the other Yakuza games?
Like weapons you could use?
I mean, there were weapons you could use, and I definitely went out of my way to the detriment of my health to pick up as many objects as possible with which to win fights.
Right.
Felt great. But I started off in spy style, and so I had tech gadgets. I had a multi-tendril, like, garrote thing to, you know, send it out and then pull back on the analog stick and just do a multi-knockdown and all of these other things going on. Like, when you walk in, you've got, like, this nice suit and sunglasses kind of thing. You've got a very bodyguard look, and the combat style had tech to match.
So in previous games, especially Yakuza 0, you have different fighting styles, usually
Yes.
for both characters. And so that this sounds like it mimics that. That's exciting to hear as well.
Yeah, I knew there were the other fighting styles in the previous titles. I just didn't know if this was one of them. I only know...
This is new.
Okay, cool. Because I only know of the fighting styles that Kazuma used in Like a Dragon.
Right.
Like, I know Beast is very much the pick up anything, win with it kind of thing. And then everything else was, some variations. This seemed new. Glad it's new.
Amazing. Well, now let's talk about what we love to talk about on this podcast, although we have our fair share of love for AAA titles, but indie games. Tons of them at PAX. Do you remember the first indie game that caught your eye that maybe you weren't looking for, but you just kind of saw and went, oh, I want to play that? Or you had heard like rumors of and then went to play?
I tried out one called Biomorph that was very cool. Mm-hmm. It's being produced by Lucid Dream Studios out of Montreal, I believe. And they advertise it as a Metroidvania meets Kirby because you are a cat-like creature that can talk. There's cinematics that are animated. There's conversations that go on. Your weapons are like AI fists that you argue with and argue with each other. Very, anime fun nonsense. But your slide is you turn to liquid and slide under things.
Nice.
And you very quickly gain the ability to certain large, strange creatures. When you defeat them, you can turn into them and use their abilities.
Okay.
So those are your traversal abilities in a Metroidvania. And the fun of it is apparently the more you morph them, the more you use them, you level up new abilities. And then when you face those creatures again, they've learned those abilities. So there's a little bit of risk reward in terms of, well, if I get everything, it actually ups the challenge.
Huh.
In the demo, I got to be two different kinds of creatures. One was sort of a over-exaggerated mountain ram kind of character for like breaking blocks and dashing across things. And the other was kind of a Sasquatch ape thing that was, again, for like climbing and big hits. And all of the style of it was very light horror, like a little bit of sci-fi, not quite body horror, but a little bit of like there's weird things out there. Katie Lesberg and I were talking about the fact that the entries for all of the creatures are very, they let the art department go crazy, didn't they? It was a very good Metroidvania experience in terms of just getting it under your fingers, but also the possibilities of the things you can morph and become. And what the story is as it unfolds, because it's very much you're apparently part of a team, you are raiding a lab, all this kind of stuff, but you have a connection to it. I'm like, okay, no, I definitely want to try this out. That was the first one I can think of that got sort of either recommended to me or I saw just while walking around and went, okay, what the hell is this?
It's funny, the structure you talk about, it is Metroidvania meets Kirby, or it's just a Metroidvania that's done that before. Because the first Shantae is pretty much this, right? Like, you get the animal forms, they allow you to do stuff, you can attack with them. It seems pretty neat. I remember, I think you had tweeted about it, and so I went and looked it up. It is coming out for Switch and Steam, and it looks really cool. It's got the favorite thing that I think you and I love most, which is a distinct art style. I think Metroidvanias that have their own distinct look and vibe are the things we gravitate towards the most, because we don't want things that are, it's why Hollow Knight is so popular, right? For a lot of reasons, but also its style is very distinct.
That's the way that it was. Hollow Knight meets Kirby was how they would give the two games, because it definitely has that, like, it's spooky. There's some creepy stuff, but it's not like we're going to give you crazy horror the whole time kind of feeling.
Right. Before we go any further, I should mention, just because it's important, and I've now seen it in several places on social media, but did your wife win something? Did maybe something happen while you were at PAX West?
Yes, it did. So a definite surprise for me was how much I enjoyed the Atari booth.
Yeah.
I don't have a deep history with Atari, but I don't have any sort of distaste for it.
Right.
And actually, amongst the press emails and things that I got leading up to the event, where you start scheduling your interviews, all of that, the Atari email seemed like there was all kinds of things going on, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. So going there, made good friends with people. I actually got a lovely interview that we'll all get to listen to at the end. That's a lot of fun. One of the things they had was a raffle. Arcade 1-Up is in the process of releasing, I think they're just about out of pre-orders, an Atari 50th anniversary cabinet.
Right.
In their typical 3/4 scale size. It is, I think, 64 Atari games.
Nice.
Like 15 or so arcade games, and the rest are 2,600 games. We tried it out. It was a lot of fun. And so it's got a trackball. It's got the super breakout knob. It's got all the buttons and things. It was very neat. Yeah, Sarah won the raffle.
Love it.
There will be so many pictures once we set the thing up. I'm in the process of moving right now. So it's all in a box.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
That's so cool. All right. We've put it off long enough, but let's talk about some favorites. Like at PAX East last year, my game of show was Slay the Princess. And by all means, it probably shouldn't have been just based on what usually I'm attracted to most, but it made an impact on me. And so I'm curious what games really hit you harder than you expected, or if you have a few favorites that really stood out to you at this con.
Okay. Well, first of all, I did the math. I played, controller in hand, 34 games at PAX West.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a lot. And coming out of it, I had you know what? I know I produce a video game podcast. I know I'm a collector. I know all these things. I came out of that weekend going, guys, friends, folks, everyone, I really love playing video games. I love video games. It was just a nice affirmation. But some of the surprising ones were, one was Techno Banter, which is sort of a Papers, Please-esque game where you are the bouncer at a techno club.
Ooh.
And so you need to be able to suss out people from the beginning. And I actually haven't played a lot of Papers, Please, if I'm being honest, but the combat mechanic reminded me of insult sword fighting from Monkey Island. You needed just the right insult to counter what people were saying. But in the Papers, Please kind of way, it's that sort of like, all right, here's how we want the night to go. Your boss is like, here's who we want. We don't want this. We don't want this. We don't want this kind of attitude, this kind of whatever. And so you observe people. You learn new insult and social repartee moves. Like people come up, all right, what are they like? Reject, accept, go in, this and that. And so there's a very level-based structure of like night by night, while also the style of it is that kind of scaling sprite in 3D, and the design of everything is a mix of human and anthropomorphic, almost like a BoJack Horseman kind of, There's animals, there's people, whatever, but much funkier, much weirder. And it was one that I enjoyed when I played it, and ever since, I've just been thinking about it going like, that fucking slaps. I like this. And also going into it, I'm like, listen, I've, again, nightlife, punk shows, whatever else, this is familiar to me. I like this. It was definitely that. One game that I looked at and went, okay, I need to feel this in order to know whether or not it's good, was Prison City, which is a 8-bit graphic style throwback kind of action game. It's got a very Contra feel, but the colors and palette are like Sunsoft games, Batman. There's like a mini-map nonlinearity about it. It felt great, and the music was really good. That's one that I definitely want to check out a little more. I enjoyed Biomorph. I got to see Little Goody Two Shoes at the Square Enix booth. That was a almost grim fairy tale style dungeon crawler RPG. And I say grim fairy tales because, yes, there is a lot of German stylings to it, but also that kind of everything's idyllic, everything is horrifying. There are monsters, and you can be accused of being a witch based on the people you talk to and the things you do in town. And so there's a little bit of fun of that. The social dynamic aspect has crept into indie game design in a lovely way.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of ones also that I didn't do interviews for, because basically every game I played where I did an interview was a lot of fun. Button City Soccer Days completely took me by surprise like that. I loved Mirthwood. I had a lot of fun. I won't bury the lead here. Anton Blast was my game of the show.
Hell yeah, let's go.
I almost felt kind of basic picking it, but no, it's really, really good. It is.
I'm grateful to have kickstarted that. I'm bummed that I
Same.
didn't get to see it in person, but it looks like it was a ton of fun. I'm glad you got to see it.
Oh, the team's fantastic. We have to get them on the show.
I would love that, yeah.
They're so cool. It's not a big team. Such great people. I had a 45-minute interview playthrough, whatever time slot. They were doing them on the hour for 45 minutes as opposed to the every half hour that everyone else is doing.
Right.
By the time I finished playing the demo, talking with Tony, the developer, it had been an hour, and he was still like, yeah, let's do an interview. Like, just
amazing.
Great
Love
game,
that.
cool people. And
Love it.
Now that this has been announced, I could probably post more pictures of stuff that I did there. Some other favorites that were recommended to me that I got to try out that were very fun. Biomorph was a recommendation. Another Crab's Treasure was...
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I've been hearing about that one.
Yeah. Luke from Crossplay Conversations. That was his favorite game. Sort of a 3D Zelda-ish action-y adventure platformer where you're a hermit crab trying to get their shell back. Yeah. And all of the different shells you pick up have different attributes and different whatever else. And the movement of it was great. I didn't get to have a lot of time with it because I had to run to an interview while I was playing it. But I didn't play it enough to have like this is my favorite. But I definitely want to check that one out. I definitely want to play that one more. I got to play 3 minutes of Rift of the Necrodancer, which very fun. I mean, I love Crypt of the Necrodancer and I love a good rhythm game, but the only reason I got to play only 3 minutes of it was because it was mobbed the whole weekend.
Wow.
And the whole raffle, Sarah winning the arcade cabinet and everything happened between 4 and 5 p.m. on Monday. The floor closed, the con closed 6 p.m. on Monday. So that last hour, Sarah and I ran around with absolute feral gremlin energy, hitting up every demo we could. There were still plenty of people there, but plenty of open spots, and Rift of the Necrodancer was the last game I played. I think I started playing it at 5:59, and I played it for 4 minutes. Then we went to the booth, bought some games from them, and the composer, Danny Baranowski, was there, and I now have a signed copy of the collector's edition of Crypt of the Necrodancer, signed by him.
That's amazing.
It's very cool.
Awesome.
I finally got to play Ebenezer in the Invisible World, the Christmas Carol-inspired continuation Metroidvania. I expected it to be fine, way better than I expected it to be.
That's awesome.
On a recommendation, I played Cobalt Core, which was sort of a shoot-'em-up card game.
Okay.
Where your cards were very much about how much shield you gave, your weapons, and how you maneuver to the left and right, as well as the big ships that you were fighting. So you could take down weak spots. You had to worry about certain weapons that they may have had or not had. You know, you could see where they were charging up. So you could still be facing them, but just a little out of the way. And even in the brief demo that I had, I could see where the complications could come in on that. And I'm very excited about that. But yeah, I mean, I could sit here and just like list every game that I played off. I also went over to, on Sunday, it was the Seattle Indie Expo, which wasn't technically associated with PAX West, but was, I believe, 25 different developers of the greater Seattle area showing their games. And there was a lot of great titles that I tried there. One that Sarah played that I didn't get to get under my fingers was Rogue Labyrinth, a sort of top-down roguelike that had an audience aspect to it based on how cool you were fighting and being. The audience would throw you like items or help you out or give you money for your next run. I was told that the money part was inspired by the impressing the nobles at the beginning of Final Fantasy IX.
Amazing.
So naturally, I was pretty into that. Also, the developers for that, John and Sarah, are definitely incredible people. Would love to have them on the show as well. But, you know, all that's here and there. I gave out a lot of cards. Also, one of the spots where I got to play things in that last hour was finally getting to play things at the Devolver booth, because they had arcade machines for Gunbrella and Pepper Grinder. And it was a wait to get to either of those. And so I finally got to play both of them, and goddamn, they're fun.
Yeah. Even at, I think it was PAX West last year is when Gunbrella had just really recently been announced, and I was a Doink Soft fan. I loved Gato Roboto, which was their last game. And so I went during the press hour to play it, and I played it for a little bit and went, all right, this is not bad. I'll come back to it. Like, I don't really have time. I want to see other stuff. And then the rest of the weekend, I couldn't play it because it was just mobbed. So that's unsurprising to hear that. And I'm very excited for that game when it comes out. I like their sense of humor. Gato Roboto was a tight experience, and so I assume that Gunbrella is just going to be more of that kind of awesomeness in a bit of a different form.
Oh, yeah. I was very excited to get to play it. And again, when you told me the concept, I'm like, oh, they're coming for me.
Yeah.
And they certainly did, and they haven't stopped. And speaking of, I also am so delighted, overjoyed, I got to play Demon School.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's another one where there'll be an interview here at the end of the episode, so I won't speak about it too much. But no, you were right. This was absolutely a game made for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect the battles to be so tight, so quick.
Yeah. Once it clicked that you have just a pool of points and you could use them with any character in any order instead of having to do a certain attack with each character kind of broke my brain. And it's funny, Demon School will be one of the few games that we've had 2 interviews for, because I think you chatted with Brandon, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think I chatted with Brandon at East last year. I could talk to him all day because he's, first of all, just a lovely human, but also like clearly a fan of the art that he's trying to emulate and like really has strong feelings about it. And so like just getting to experience it, I'm just glad you did too, because it's one of those few games that I know the minute we can get our hands on it, we're never going to shut up about it.
Oh, absolutely. Much like Anton Blast.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful to Haley from Stride PR because
Haley's wonderful.
Because I had my interview slot and I spent all of it playing the game. And I was like, oh, but I wanted to talk to Brandon about that. Can we figure out scheduling some additional time? They figured that out. It was super smooth, super easy, and it was fantastic. Also near that booth was where the Playdate was.
Oh, nice.
I finally got to hold and play a Playdate. And for any listeners who don't know what that is, Playdate is a pseudo-proprietary handheld. If you've seen the little yellow Game Boy-like looking things with a crank on them, that's a Playdate. And they are Wi-Fi enabled so that you can go on the marketplace and play these sort of HD black and white games. And some developers use the crank, some don't. And it was a lot of fun to try a bunch of them. Lucas Pope, the creator of Papers, Please, also developed a game for the Playdate called Mars After Midnight. So that was the one everyone was excited to play, the one they were pushing. I played it. I don't know how much more of the experience there is because I didn't play a lot of Papers, Please, but I sure played the hell out of Return of the Obra Dinn.
Sure.
So I know however much I played doesn't necessarily have to be the whole experience, but I'm intrigued. I'm into it. It was cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, I got hands-on with a Playdate. A friend of the show, Jesse Vitale, has one, and when I was at his apartment last, I got to like hold it and mess around with it a little bit. It's a cute little device. I don't know that I would ever buy it. Then again, I never thought I would buy the Analog Pocket, and here we are, so who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
But it does look like a cool device, and I'm glad they had a booth at PAX because I know that like it was all word of mouth and like through the internet because it was like started its ramp up during COVID, and so it's cool that they were able to do something in person.
Yeah. Something fun that I also saw was a number of games that had easy local co-op to them.
Hell yeah.
I mean, Infernax has the Do or Die expansion.
We still need to stream that.
Oh, yeah. No, I sat down with Sarah to play it. I don't think she would have given Infernax much thought, given sort of the more gothic look to it.
Right.
But she started playing it and went, oh, this is fun. I'm like, yeah, I know. And it was just the right amount of, oh, we should play this together. Yes, we should. Yes, we will. So that was great. I feel like before we wrap up, I kind of want to like list out other games that I played that are of note. Don't even need to go too crazy into it, but like some of the other Metroidvanias I played, Animal Well, which got a very cool old, great aesthetic to it and no combat. So it's more about avoiding hazards and making friends with animals. Yeah, Ebenezer in the Invisible World, playing through... I played 30XDX for the first time.
Hell yeah.
And then bought it on site.
Of course.
That's another one that did good local co-op. Dragon is Dead, that has a, oh shit, Blizzard from 1997 is going to sue somebody. This is the most Diablo 1 specifically ass Metroidvania I've ever played, and I need more of it. It was over at PM Studios. I played another space opera, was a lot of fun. I unfortunately was playing that on keyboard and mouse, and I think I'll enjoy it a lot more with a controller, but still had a great time with it. Playing through Altered Alma was another one that had a bit of, oh, a redheaded robot in a sci-fi world. Ain't going out of style.
Nope, for sure
I
not.
mean, another space opera also had a redheaded character, and so it's just like okay. Extremely Powerful Capybaras was an incredibly fun Vampire Survivors, sort of arena survivor-like game. A lot of fun and great local co-op on that one. I got to play a little bit of the Wingspan new expansion, Oceania. I'm a big fan of the board game, and I got to play the digital version, and I'm excited to play more of it. From the same studio that is bringing Techno Banter, they also are releasing The Gap, which is a first-person narrative exploration kind of game that I'm excited to see more of. It was a very cool concept. It was one of those where I was talking with the guy from there for a little while of, games are as long as they need to be. And I'm excited to have this like afternoon long experience where I need to then like stare at the wall and call my mother and tell her I love her kind of thing.
Right.
And Quadroids was a very cool puzzle platformer game of using just the shoulder buttons of a controller to control lemming-like robots running around. You don't necessarily, like, you basically make them jump, and then everything else is figuring it out. And it's 4 different quadrants, and they move around about it. Got very brain teasy very quickly. It was great. Freaked Flea Pit was the other Crypt of the Necrodancer-like game that I played, where we need more Crypt of the Necrodancer-like games. Rhythm roguelikes. Let's do it. It's very cool. At Seattle Indie Expo, I also got to try out Abbott's Gamble. One person making their first game, but a very tight card game. Play it for free in your browser on itch, so that's a fun one. Just Crow Things, which is sort of a 3D platformer being a crow, trying to collect shiny objects, pooping on cars. Very fun.
That sounds like one that we'd have a lot of fun with.
Oh, yeah. Word Voyance, which got into a great conversation about accessibility, because it is meant as a sort of Words with Friends style Scrabble game that works with phone screen readers and can be played by the visually impaired.
Amazing. I love that.
There were some very fun conversations about accessibility that also happened that if we have some of these developers on, we can talk about more. And if not, Matt, you and I should definitely talk more about some of the varying kinds of accessibility concerns that gaming is heir to. A lot of people are working very hard to make sure more people can just play the game.
Yeah, I know a ton of, I'm very lucky to know a ton of folks who are accessibility advocates within the game space, folks that we've had both on SideQuest and then just folks that I know through and in and out and around the world. And yeah, we should definitely have them on and chat about that kind of stuff. Because while Geoff and I do benefit from accessibility options, we are not the target audience mostly. And so it's good to talk to the folks who really are advocating for that stuff and are affected by the choices that are made in the accessibility space. So that's definitely a future episode for the show for sure.
Absolutely. It was very cool to just see what people are coming out with, see what's going on. My Atari interview, we talk a little bit about the Atari 2600 Plus. Very germane to an upcoming conversation we have about game preservation, the idea of console manufacturers reproducing consoles or producing ways to play your old material while also allowing for digital is a great means of preservation. And Atari, one of the reasons I kept going back there was they are releasing physical versions of unreleased games. They are updating old IPs while also preserving the original ones that people remember and producing ways for people to experience it, to meet them where they are.
Right.
And so I'm very excited for that sort of future. And so, yeah, no, I came out of PAX West like, man, I love video games. And it's for all those reasons that people are going about making new and cool experiences. People are wearing their influences on their sleeve, unashamed, while they make a game that is the version of this that they wish they had when they were a kid, which, you know what? Anybody who's played games their whole life has those. And it's so cool when there are others that are making it, because even if it's not my dream game, I want to play your dream game because that passion's going to show. And some of my favorite games absolutely were that. That's why Anton Blast was my game of the show.
Amazing. Yeah. That's one of the things about PAX that I really love is every time, no matter what's going on in the world, when I leave PAX, I go, man, I love video games. Video games are great.
Right?
That euphoria doesn't last very long because unfortunately the actual video game space has a ton of bullshit to go with it. But like being at PAX, like it's the core of why I love this industry and this fandom and these people. So I'm glad that you got to experience that, and hopefully we'll get to do it together again sometime soon. Before we wrap up and we do our sign off and our Patreon shoutouts and all that stuff, I do want to say that it is officially official that Geoff and I will be at PAX Unplugged in December. Ooh. We're very excited. I've been many times. Geoff and I have not attended together. This is going to be your first PAX Unplugged. Is that correct? Or no, you went last year.
I went last year. You couldn't go.
That's right. I couldn't go last year. That trend had continued, but God willing, we will both be at this one, and it'll be a lot of fun. We're going to try and play a lot of video game-based board games because I've wanted to have a conversation for a while about what that transference is like. Board games becoming digital video games, also important, but not quite the same as like trying to convert the mechanics of a very defined video game into a board game. So look forward to that kind of stuff. If you were at PAX West, tell us what you loved about it. I know a ton of our listeners did get to go. Geoff hung out with a bunch of them. Please let us know what some of your favorite stuff was at the show too, because Geoff is only one human and can only see so many things.
Yeah, and there were tons of games that were recommended to me that I didn't have the time, I didn't get online, I didn't whatever. I definitely let where there were open chairs or where there were recommendations guide me. So I never did get to play Thank Goodness You're Here. I only got to play Pepper Grinder in the last few minutes, and there were plenty of others that were out there. And yeah, I walked that floor over and over again. I still kept finding new things. So please let us know. And I also found out, I think Monday morning, that Steam had a PAX West 2023 page of like all of these games in either early access or demos or that have Steam pages. Like, here are the games that are there. I'm like, dang it. That's how I want to find out what games are here. So I need to remember that for next time. So with all that in mind, yeah, absolutely. If you went to PAX West, what were some of your highlights? If you didn't go, or any of the games I mentioned you want to know more about, bug us about that. If you want to follow up about anything about the interviews you're going to hear at the end of this episode, once again, go for it. Please get in touch with us. There's so many great ways to get in touch with us. Across any social media that we're on, we are Fun and Games Pod, whether that is Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Blue Sky. You can also email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, and who you'd like us to talk with in future episodes. And if you want to have a all-in-one place of what we're up to, as well as if you have the means and desire to help support us in a financial or concrete way, I guess, like that, you can also visit our Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod, where just about anything we write up, anything we're working on, all goes up there. There's an easy feed to subscribe to as well, so you don't miss anything that Matt or I produce. And you can even get yourself up on the high scoreboard. And today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Needon, Roger Reichart, Alejandro Alves, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Rob Tremarco, Robert Proyne, and Sean Bowen. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. The show floor closes in 15 minutes.
Jeez, God, it gave me anxiety the way you said that. I was just like, oh, I remember that pressure.
I mean, also, no matter what convention I go to, no announcer's voice, they're all wonderful. Will compare to attention Gen Con attendees. The time is now. Like, whoever does that, you're a hero to me.
You can also rate and review us in your podcast platform or device of choice. Our optimal ones are, of course, Apple and Spotify, as they help us to get featured. Both of those links are in the show notes, as well as a direct link to our Discord server. You can go to certpov.com to find that link as well and join in the conversation. We have some great folks hanging out over on the Discord talking about what games they've been playing, what shows they've been watching, what comics they're reading. It's all of the shows on the network, just not us. So it's tons of awesome, really great, nerdy conversations.
Yeah, I feel really bad. We've been having wonderful, like, hey, what's everyone playing this weekend? And this whole month, I've been gearing up to move. And so most of my free time has been, like, tied up in that. And so it's either I'm not playing a ton, I'm playing a little bit of this. And last weekend, what's everybody playing? Boy, do I have a list for you.
Right, exactly.
And so here we are. But it has been so good to hear what everyone's been up to and share that and continue all of this. Thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Hi there, folks. I am here on Saturday at PAX West at the Subliminal booth with Ryan, lead developer, producer general, one of the main visionaries at Subliminal Games, and I just got playing Button City Soccer Days, which is a lot of fun. Ryan, thank you for taking the time to chat with me and show the game.
Yeah, super thanks for coming on over. We're super excited to have you.
Absolutely. Now, Button City Soccer Days is a pseudo-sequel expansion on your game Button City.
Yeah, we think of it kind of like the chain of memories of the Button City series. It still advances the story, it's still a very key component, but it switches up gameplay a little bit. We were at the arcade before, now we're touching virtual grass and kicking soccer balls, playing some soccer. For us, Button City is always a celebration of our passions and the communities around it. For Button City, it was our arcades. We were part of a Splatoon 2 local scene. We were also big at our local arcade. I'd be playing Maximum Tune 5, maxed out my car. Wonderful game, by the way. So really a passion for the arcade and the communities around it, and that was Button City 1. Button City Soccer Days is our passion for soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, the beautiful game. So we wanted to take that passion and take Button City, the story and everything and the characters, and bring them into this new area so people could find out why we're so passionate about it and share it with the world.
Fantastic. Was anybody on the team a big soccer, football? Were they a big fan of that beforehand, or was this something that everyone kind of got caught up in before developing the game?
So during Button City development, a new soccer team came to our town, and we fell absolutely in love with the team and the entire community surrounding it. And we've been supporters ever since their first game and deep dived into it. So we didn't really think about ever doing a sequel until maybe a year afterwards. And I was watching somebody play the original Button City, and we have a little character in there that was kind of like an homage to our fandom of soccer. He has this little cute soccer kit, and I see him again. I'm like, I really want that jersey. I just want that jersey so bad. And I was like, well, if I'm making this jersey, I need to have a reason. So I was wanting to play soccer, so I was like, well, let's make a soccer team. So we made a real-life recreational co-ed team and called it Button City FC. And it's like, well, if we're making a real-life team, we should just make a game. So that was the kind of like driving force of it. Just this cute little animal just like dancing in a cool jersey that I really wanted. So yeah.
It's turned into a very delightful experience here playing through the game. They're very quick rounds, they're 3-minute halves, and very easy to pick up and play. I'm not a big FIFA player, but I did play a lot of soccer growing up. Now, Button City itself is a lot more exploring the town and talking with your friends and sort of social ideas, the bonds that you have with people around you. Does that carry over into soccer days?
Yeah, so we are continuing the story. We are continuing the unique traversal system and the total vibes that we have with Button City, where you are talking to friends, making new friends, and going through a story. We are evolving it a little bit, where we are bringing in a calendar system. Think like Persona, where you can still go on quests and everything, but you'll also pick what you're wanting to do each day, and it'll advance time to your next soccer match. And you're playing throughout a season. In the first Button City, it was across 7 days. In this one, we're going like over maybe a month. We're still working that out. But you will be able to meet new friends who might be able to join your team, or you have to like take care of your character after a soccer match. Maybe they got a little hurt and you need to help out your friends.
Can't go day after day after day.
Yeah, and you'll also be able to find little story pockets and threads that we absolutely loved in the original one. So we are not giving up on story. We are continuing it. We are just pushing it forward.
I think some of my favorite sports video games are the ones that let you sort of explore and have a story. I mean, any of the Nintendo golf games or any of those.
Yeah.
So I think that is the right way to go about it.
For me, at least, like with soccer days, with 3v3, what we wanted to do with it is have it fast, frenetic. You don't need to be a tactics person. We want it to be fun still.
It's just a 4-person team, after all.
So we don't have an offsides rule. The ball doesn't go out of play. It's still fast, it's fluid. And to get back to like FIFA and things like that, in FIFA, the ball kind of magnets to your feet, like the character's controlling the ball for you. In this one, the ball doesn't connect to you. So it's a little bit more like things like Rocket League. We really liked that very physicsy directness of like the ball. Because like while I'm playing, I'm like starting to discover, how do you actually get these skills to get it under control? And like learning it in this game has been really cool. Yesterday, one person picked it up so quick. They beat me, and I was going all out. They beat me 8-1, and I was like really, really surprised on that. Like most people are getting like 0-1, 2-1, like real soccer scores.
Yeah, we were chatting before, and you beat me 1-0. Like that feels like a soccer game to me.
Yeah. I'm like, this guy just like sneak into my hotel room last night and just like play the game, like get ready for it and everything. So yeah, I think people will find that it's just like really easy to pick up and you can learn it, very expressive in movements. I just really love that type of game, honestly.
Yeah, and I think also with it not attaching to your feet like that, I felt it that more kind of, I'm just fiddling with physics here. It really suits the absolutely colorful, vivid, and adorable art style that the characters and the environment has. And at the end of the day, I feel probably no matter how good my team will get at the end of the season, it's still going to feel like I'm a bunch of kids running around playing.
Yeah, like what we're wanting to give people is essentially the Button City soccer anime tournament arc type of deal.
Ooh, yeah.
Well, where people are able to go through a season, see how your team grows, things like that, make new friends, make new rivals, and have like kind of like one of those kind of classic sports stories. It's set in the Button City universe, affecting these same characters that people have grown to love, and like seeing how they evolve with this as well. So we're really excited to bring people into Button City Soccer Days.
I think so, yeah. I'm excited to play when it comes out. What is the planned release date for the game?
So we are looking at 2024. We're super excited, somewhere in that 365-day year,
What platforms are you planning on releasing it for?
So we are confirmed PC, Mac, and we have announced Nintendo Switch, PS5, Xbox Series XS, and we are trying to release all sim chip, honestly.
Fantastic. That's good coverage. And if anybody listening to this wanted to check out more about Button City Soccer Days, where would be the best place for them to check it out?
A super great place to check it out is buttoncitygame.com. You'll be able to find out more about Button City, the original, and Button City Soccer Days. If you want to go directly to find out about Button City Soccer Days, you could quick jump there by going to buttoncitysoccerdays.com.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to show me this wonderful game, to take the time to chat with me here and share it with our listeners. I will get started working on whatever my Button City FC cheer and chant is going to be.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time. I am at Summit Sphere's booth at PAX West, and I just got done playing Anton Blast, and I am here with Tony, fearless leader at Summit Sphere. Tony, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to chat with me about your game.
Well, thanks so much for coming over and playing, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Anton Blast, for any listener that hasn't checked it out, didn't kickstart it, hasn't seen it yet, is an absolutely fantastic kinetic action platformer that draws all sorts of influences. Any good action platformer from your past, there's probably a little bit of a feel to it like that. It's got a little bit of Wario, especially Wario Land from the Virtual Boy. I was feeling kinetics of Donkey Kong Country. There's Crash Bandicoot to it. There is Earthworm Jim and its art design and its cartoonish aspect, all wrapped up in a very how you remember the Game Boy Advance actually looking versus probably how it actually was. Did I get it all?
Just a bit, we missed Shovel Knight, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Well, fans of the show definitely know how much we love Shovel Knight, so there you go too. Well, you were hanging out with me while I was doing my playthrough and trying my best. A lot of what you were talking about was the feel of the game. Now,
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you mean by that?
So, really the big thing with any 2D platformer, right, or just any platformer in a general way, game feel is so important, right? You can have your crazy special moves, all your advanced tech, and we do. We have a lot of that. But really the core running and jumping has to feel perfect. It has to feel tight as nails. So I think that we pulled that off with a lot of tweaking. Anton and Annie feel nice and weighty. You feel like you've got control of them. And beyond that, we've also just got a lot going on in terms of their special moves. We've got the sort of Wario Land style charge move, but we've rethought that a bit. We have a Crash Team Racing style charge chain going on, which I saw you playing with.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So we got that. That's kind of like your, hey, let's go crazy, let's go fast, advanced speed run mechanic. We've got a hammer bounce that lets you pogo around. So, we've really worked hard to make sure that we have best-in-class platforming mechanics, because let's face it, 2D platformers are not all figured out yet.
No, absolutely. And anytime I fell from a high place, anytime I lost a run at a start from a checkpoint, I blamed myself. None of it was the controls. So really that's what it comes down to, I think.
For sure, man. I think ultimately my philosophy is that the friction shouldn't come from the player controls. It should come from the level. Really, you want that to be your challenge. You can get good at the controls. I think there's definitely room for that, but they shouldn't be fighting you.
You also mentioned the characters, Anton and Annie.
Yes.
What can you tell me about some of the design behind that? I also absolutely love Annie's design, and I think that should be highlighted a little bit here too.
All right, well, with Anton, I've had that character for many, many years. Christ, I want to say almost 15, 16 years now. So he's just kind of been sitting around as a character that we use for miscellaneous stuff. And then we brought him back for a Game Boy Game Jam game called Anton Ball. So I sort of saw him as this everyman Mario-looking fella. He could be anything you wanted him to be. We've all known a guy like Anton. He's kind of a big single dad, and we love him for that. When it came time to make Anton Blast, I really wanted to push him farther. He's got that sort of Crash Bandicoot Tasmanian Devil build about him. His face is just his body.
Yeah.
Right? But he's kind of almost got that gnarly rat fink thing about him too.
Yeah, really scrungy.
Very scrungy, very graffiti. And then we have Annie as well, who we created for Anton Ball Deluxe, which came after the Game Jam game. And she's sort of Anton's unofficial co-worker. She just follows him around, really.
Right.
I don't know if she actually gets paid for what she does, but she likes doing it.
Another piece of the design that I definitely want to touch on real quick here is the music. It's continuing that sort of looking back to move forward in a great way. The soundtrack is a very catchy kind of, it makes you think of the Sega Genesis New Jack style.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like stuff like Sonic CD was definitely like a really big influence for us, which maybe for an indie game at this point is not particularly original. Like a lot of indies say we love Sonic CD, but I think for me, like my background has always been very experimental. I love a lot of different groups. My formative years were kind of like, hey, I like Nine Inch Nails and Rage Against the Machine and Michael Jackson, all this stuff. So it's just a sort of weird eclectic thing that kind of comes together. And being the director of this game, I can just compose whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, pretty nice.
So and people seem to appreciate it and like it, and it fits the game's grungy style. So we're happy with it.
Very cool. Well, I mean, given that you have to wear so many hats, how large of a team has been working on this?
So we have a core team of about 4 that are really like full time on the thing. But outside of that, we have a team of about 12 working on it right now. And that includes our animation team, which is full of traditional artists and such. It's still a small team, we're very much veritably indie in that way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, given the fact that the team is that size and you've only been working on it for, you said, 18 months, the polish on this is truly exciting. Do you have a planned release date?
So, nothing to announce on that today, except the game will be releasing in 2024.
Fantastic. What are the planned platforms, and are there any aspirational ones?
Steam and Switch are our goals for now. We have a great relationship with Nintendo, so Switch is actually our primary platform. All of their kits are running on Switch for this run. It runs perfectly on there. It's my favorite way to play. As far as other platforms go, we have great relationships with every manufacturer, PlayStation, Xbox, Epic. So really it's just a matter of what makes the most sense. We want to hit everything, of course, but we have to make sure that those platforms make sense for us so we can see a good return on our investment.
Of course. And if any of our listeners who hadn't heard of Anton Blast are now super interested, as I think they should be, where can they best check out more about Summit Sphere and Anton Blast?
Well, our Steam page can be found at antonblast.com. It'll take you right there. There's also Twitter or X. Searching Anton Blast will get you there. The handle is Summit Sphere. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. And myself, I'm on Twitter at GraysonZ80.
Fantastic. Well, Johnny, thank you so much for bringing this incredible game and taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much for coming along and playing it, man. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it.
I am at the Bad Bridge Games booth here with Brian from same company, and I just played a fair amount of the demo of their first game, Mirthwood. Brian, thank you for taking a few minutes to chat with me about this.
Yeah, no problem.
What can you tell us about Mirthwood?
Yeah, well, it's essentially a farm sim and medieval fantasy kind of thing, and think Stardew Valley mixed with Fable or The Witcher. Mm-hmm. So we're blending a lot of the kind of normal farm sim elements with some of the bigger, more exploration and deeper crafting and all that kind of stuff of the RPG side of things.
Fantastic. And it's got a really incredible graphical style to it. It reminds me of sort of like Wildermyth or any of those other more storybook style, cardboard cutout, paper cut kind of thing that really suits a kind of the Gathering idea of it, because again, like that sort of, you have The Witcher or something like Valheim from a little while ago too, where this has a much more, despite the fact that I got my butt kicked several times in some fights, it still felt cozy the entire time. Was that sort of the idea to go forth on that?
Yeah, right, pretty much. Like, cozy but not too cozy. Trying to get a nice balance there where it is still kind of cozy, but going a little bit leaning more into that kind of dark fantasy things from like The Witcher, that sort of, maybe sneak a werewolf or something like that,
Ooh,
but yeah.
Very nice. And I also really enjoyed, while starting out the demo, getting to choose whether or not you're a noble peasant or a rogue or an actor, and all of them have very clear advantages and disadvantages to them. What was sort of the angle you were coming in on that and sort of the building of the characters?
Well, a big part of it kind of came from one of our other sort of inspirations for some of the more the back-end stuff is like RimWorld and the story generation there.
Very nice.
The characters, how you can kind of all have that positive and negative traits. So it's a little bit similar there, and then as well, we're going to have this DNA system where the characters in the world kind of view you differently based on some of the things. So this is just another tie-in, so other royal characters will be more interested in talking with you than the peasants. If you're a royal, they're kind of like not so interested, they think that you're stuck up, but you can still befriend them and everything, but it might just be a little bit more challenging.
From the get-go, when choosing every aspect of this for making your character, you make it very clear, here is a positive, here is a negative. And it told me from the beginning, just make some choices, enjoy yourself, you're never going to get it perfect.
Right.
And it's a little dark, it's a little scary, but it's not too dark and scary. I got to play a little bit with the conversation aspects of some of the townsfolk from some of the settlements that I made into. What can you tell me about where that could lead you in your adventure?
So it's a little bit like The Sims or something like that, where you don't know them and you kind of build relationships through not such dialogue like you played there, where it's like you kind of just tell a joke and it just shows an icon, and then you laugh, and then hopefully they laugh as well if they like the joke, and then they can send a little icon back at you.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly the specific words you say, but the emotions that you were giving behind it.
Exactly, right, yeah. And so as you progress your relationships, there's friendship and romance levels with all the characters in the town. And so they can be your companions and follow you around for a while, help you fight, or come back onto the farm and help you do some farming there, and also give you quests if they've got things that they want to do that you can come along with them. And then, of course, romance can lead to marriage and all of that, yeah.
Now, what can you tell me about some of the gathering and crafting elements of Mirthwood?
So we all want to make sure that really, it's pretty balanced. If you want to focus in certain areas, we want to allow you to do that. But
You can be a farmer class after all.
Right, yeah. And if you wanted to stick to that, you can. But there is, we want to kind of reward the exploration. So going out into some of the further reaches of the world, there's more rare resources and things like that you can bring back to craft better gear, as well as while you're out and about finding rare swords or different armor, things like that would be out there. But there is also a market system back at town, so if you really were not that interested in the combat, let's say, which is kind of too much for you, and you just wanted to only dip your toes in there, you can go into the market and get most things there so that you can still craft some cool outfits and things like that.
It sounds like there's a lot on the palette here that people can sort of make it the adventure they want.
There's not just the main quests or even the side quests from different characters. There's also just little notes that you find that's, the sword is in the chest behind the church. I couldn't make it. The bandits got me.
And that doesn't show up on your to-do list, but you need to remember that it's there, and you go.
Right.
And there it is.
Yeah. And it'll also tie in a little bit with some of the living world elements, where if you kind of missed something of a bandit attacking a caravan, for instance, then it can kind of leave behind some clues for you to discover later on.
Oh, very cool. The world lives while you do too. That's incredible. I'm curious, and I want to do more, and I'm very excited for Mirthwood's release. So what is the planned release date for Mirthwood?
We don't have a specific date, but 2024.
All right, fantastic. Now, a lot of my experiences playing these sorts of games have been doing multiplayer adventures. Is there any plans on any level of doing either drop in, drop out of each other's world, or a dedicated multiplayer playthrough?
Similar with the experiences of co-op and these sorts of games, we would love that, but we're gonna just target single player first, and then ideally maybe as DLC soon, as soon as we can really get some at least local co-op, so something like that drop in kind of co-op.
Of course, yeah. But there again, I know asking that, it's not you need to have it, because I don't think we've mentioned this yet on the record. You are pretty much half of the entire development team.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And you're handling a lot. When I ask who's going to put in multiplayer, I'm asking you.
Yeah.
I know this. This is fine. Now, what are the intended platforms of release?
So Steam first is our main target, and then Nintendo Switch around the same time. Will depend on how that kind of goes, but that's definitely soon after. And then nothing else officially determined yet.
Now, if folks wanted to check out Mirthwood for themselves, is there anywhere that they could either look it up, or is there a demo out or forthcoming that they can?
Nothing yet. Definitely wishlist on Steam. Follow there. We'll announce when we'll have a Discord server that will get some, if you want a beta test or things like that, we'll do that there. And then look forward to a Next Fest demo next year sometime.
Fantastic. Well, listeners, if this sounds up your alley, be sure to check out Mirthwood. You can wish list it on Steam, and I'm certainly excited about it. Brian, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me
thanks,
about your game. I am here with Brandon Sheffield, the director of Necrosoft Games, the developers of the upcoming title Demon School. Brandon, thank you for taking a little bit of time to chat with me.
Certainly.
Now, I've now had the opportunity to play through a little bit of the story and do a very bad job on the boss fight, but I'm not discouraged. When I first played through this, Brandon, you were saying that one of the goals was actually making the tactical combat very fast. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were trying to figure out a way to do tactical battles while reducing the number of clicks that a player needs to do in the game to make things happen. Because in your traditional tactics games, you select a character, you choose where they move, you confirm it, you then choose like attack, defend, item, and then you choose a direction, you confirm that, and it has kind of like a relaxing vibe to it, which can be nice, but we wanted to do something that was much faster. So in our game, you select a character and then you choose their direction, and then if there's something to interact with, they'll interact with it in the way that their class, stunning, debuffing, attacking, healing, etc. In a traditional tactics game, you might have one character who can do a bunch of different things. In this case, we've split that across 4 characters to make you try to use all of them in concert to ultimately come up with kind of like a zippy, fast tactical battle system that just moves really quickly. I started thinking about this more as an RPG with tactical battles rather than a tactics RPG, because you do spend a lot of time running around the world, talking to people, doing mini games and other things, and the battles are then more quick, punchy punctuations to your events that you're going through. So it's more like a Yakuza game in terms of pacing, where you do these quests and then it always ends in a battle, and then that battle takes you like 30 seconds. It's longer than 30 seconds in our game, but it's that kind of vibe where you're like building up a story and then there's a battle and the battle's pretty quick.
Yeah, compared to something like a Fire Emblem or a Final Fantasy Tactics or any of those
where you're spending like a half hour on a map.
Now that you say it, it's almost as if you've replaced the menuing in your typical turn-based RPG with the grid board, and that's kind of the equivalency if you wanted to describe it to someone who's kind of just listening here and trying to put that together.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Well, something else that I really enjoy about this, and why I guess I kept saying Persona there, but you're right, there is a Yakuza feel to the pace and everything, is the characters themselves. Something I appreciated playing through this was in a lot of those social conversations that are here in the demo as it is, when you have those choices of who to support, who to choose first in a situation, you make it very clear and transparent how that could affect your relationship and with whom.
Yeah, I don't want people to have to revert their saves because they chose the wrong option and they got like a little bit of friendship instead of a lot of friendship, because I know that we all kind of want to max it out on the first run, and so we just wanted to make it very clear and transparent, because there's no particular downside to doing it. Like, why not let you know? It's kind of fun to experiment, but it's more fun to get the right answer.
Well, and certainly when that is only an aspect of the gameplay loop and not the entire point. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of the horror aspects of this game, because it doesn't hit you over the head with it, but it's got a little bit of the locked room, isolated island, a little bit of a Scooby mystery kind of thing, but also right before we started this interview, I played the boss demo, and hot damn, the visceral look of that boss and kind of the shift in scale and animation style, even beyond the suspension of belief that games have, and this game in particular had during the story demo. What can you say about some of the big horror pushes in this game?
So we're pretty influenced by Italian horror films from the 70s and 80s, and that manifests itself in terms of our lighting and some of the visuals and things, but also talking about practical effects. So in horror films of the era, you would get physical, practical effects in these movies that would make you as a viewer wonder, how did they do that? Or it doesn't fully kick you out of the narrative, but it makes you think about the work that got put into it. And so with our sort of perspective shifts, showing you that, oh wow, this world is actually 3D, it's a similar kind of vibe where we're hoping to make you notice the work without kicking you out of the narrative completely. And all of our horror stuff is kind of in that vein where it's spooky and maybe unnerving, but it's not scary or terrifying. Although We did have one person that played it at the Tokyo Game Show, and when the skeleton boss opens up his head and the eyeball flops out, she just ran away. Which was very funny.
Well, you can't account for everybody, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but do you have a planned release date yet for the game?
Not exactly. As soon as we can get it done.
Sounds great. If any listeners here who didn't know about Demon School before are suddenly very interested, where can they either try it out or find out more about it?
You can wishlist it on Steam. There's no public demo currently, but there will be more of them soon. And it'll eventually be out on Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch, so it'll be everywhere.
Well, that answers one of my next questions there. And certainly when a public demo happens, Matt or I will be sure to let everybody know about it, as amongst
Excellent.
others, I'm sure. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, to help me check out Demon School, and to help our listeners know a little bit more about it.
Certainly. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Hey there, everybody. I am here at the Atari booth. We're talking about, well, a lot of what they've got going on.
So last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, and there's a new CEO, Wade Rosen, who joined the company about 3 years ago as chairman, and 2 years ago as CEO. We've got a new team in place, and if you were to ask us what our big picture goal was, it's like, okay, whatever we do right now, we want to make sure that Atari is as recognized and loved and relevant 50 years from now as it was when it launched back in '72, right? So Atari is a very well-known brand. You go into any coffee shop, you see somebody wearing an Atari t-shirt, but it was out of balance in that it was a really well-recognized pop culture brand, but what made it known was making games and making game hardware, and we weren't doing that anymore. So we're trying to bring the brand back in balance and make sure that Atari's known for making games again. So about 2 years ago, we started really producing premium games for PC and console in earnest again. We've launched a ton of titles. We're showing 6 games here at PAX. 2 of them, Lunar Lander Beyond, which is coming out next year, is the first time it's playable here at PAX, which is cool. Part of what we're doing is making new games based on Atari legacy IP. So Lunar Lander Beyond based on Lunar Lander. There's a new version of Haunted House coming out, which is an exploration of the original. So we work with independent studios who really have a strong connection to one of our games, and they'll develop it in a new and unexpected way. Take something that was an arcade game, turn it into a roleplay, tactical RPG. You never know, right? So making new games is a big part of what we're doing. We also, a week ago, announced the Atari 2600 Plus, which is a faithful recreation of the Atari 2600, the very first console, commercially viable, successful console that's really started the industry going. And that plays actual cartridges, like 2600 and 7800 cartridges.
So anybody that has any of those kind of taking up space at home or goes to the used video game store and goes, what am I going to do with the 2600 cartridge? Atari is answering that question.
We're answering that question, and we're making it easier because it connects obviously to HDMI, right? So this beautiful crisp digital signal, but otherwise it's the original machine. It's 20% smaller. We brought back the joysticks and the paddle controls. Those are all based on the original blueprints, original materials. They work actually with the original ones and the new ones. And we've been making new cartridges again, mostly focusing on rare, unreleased prototypes or games that are really hard to find. But we're also starting to introduce new games. We have a game called Mr. Run and Jump, which is our first new 2600 games. This Fatal Run in 1991, right? That's a big gap. So we're definitely a retro brand. Retro gaming is very important to us. We actually own games from the handheld era and from other console eras, PlayStation 1, Genesis, Dreamcast, bringing those back as well. There's a real interest in retro both from the collector community and from the player community, really of all ages. People wanting to relive the games that they played as kids, but also younger gamers who want to discover these games that they've heard about or that really sometimes launched a genre. Like go back to see what the original was like. Adventure. It's an original adventure game. Like it's called Adventure.
Yeah.
Right. So and that playing experience is really interesting. The other analogy that I always talk about too is just it's very similar, I think, to the revival of vinyl. People want the physical experience, and there's this interesting thing that happens. Like I do it too. I bought a new record player maybe 2 years ago. Absolutely love it. Have it in my office at home, and I listen to it all the time. And I've got my old albums. But what I'm doing now is selectively going back over the last 50 years of music, what are the albums that I want to buy new? And I'm buying the really nice heavy 80-gram colored vinyl with the nice collector's edition sleeves. And for the albums that are really important to me, and those are now like increasing my collection next to my old albums. And I think that's how gamers kind of view it too. It's like I've got like 2,600 cartridges that I grew up with or that I've been collecting over the years, but now I can also buy new ones for the games that were really important to me.
And half the time when you go into a used video game store, the amount of times that I have bought a game for any console I have where I go, I don't know what this is. It's $4. I'm going to get $4 of entertainment just owning this thing. And you put it in there, and the amount of new favorites I have found doing that, and that is an experience that you are giving gamers.
Oh yeah, we're all discovering games. It's really fun working with Wade because he somehow has played and or knows every game that's ever existed. His mental inventory of gaming is incredible. He usually knows who developed the game and then also who owns the rights to it.
That's handy.
Because he's an avid gamer and he's also an avid collector, and that's a great environment to work in because we look out and we ask ourselves those questions like, what games deserve to come back? Some of them get made into modern games, like a Centipede Recharged or a Cavern Mars Recharged, which is a modern version of the original. Some get re-released as a cartridge because having the original out is important. Some will go into a collection, like Jaguar. As we said, it's an odd form factor, but some of those games were wild. So getting them back out and onto modern console is like a good solution for them. And yeah, like knowing the games and finding those deep cuts and finding the right games to bring out on the right platform is sort of what we're about, and it's really interesting. With the modern games, one of the really fun things is like we work with Dreams Incorporated on Lunar Lander Beyond, right?
Yeah.
The game we just announced. They brought out Chris Tales a couple of years ago. It's sort of beautiful storytelling and visual approach. They're really good. They're craftsmen and artisans. And having a conversation with them about like, okay, well, you could work with any Atari game in the world. Which one would you pick? And they were like, hands down, we want Lunar Lander. And we were like, Lunar Lander is like, it's a simple vector game. All you do is land. Like, what do you get? Like, you guys are about storytelling. What are you going to do with Lunar Lander? And they built this amazing backstory of like the Pegasus Corporation that you're working for, and this, what your job is in delivering things to planets, and there's like a mystery behind it, and there's deep storytelling behind all the characters, and it's like, oh, I get it. And we love making that connection with developers.
So, do you have a planned release date for the 2600 Plus? I know it's in pre-orders now.
November 17th.
November 17th.
It's releasing in North America and Europe. There's confirmed distribution in the Middle East as well. And Australia and New Zealand. I don't know about Asia yet. It will probably eventually make it there, but I do not have any I'm not aware of any retailers signed up in Asia quite yet. But it's fairly broad availability into some of the Eastern European markets. We have a full list of retailers on our website.
Fantastic. Now, are there any properties that haven't quite gotten that re-release treatment yet, or is there a console or a piece within Atari's legacy that you personally, if you got to Money's No Object, hit the button, is there one that's not on the books yet or hasn't been announced that you really would want to say?
You mean in terms of a game or a hardware system?
Either one.
I gotta say, there's so many fun games. Like I'm really waiting for somebody to work with the Major Havoc IP. I think that's a really interesting IP. And I think it could go in so many directions. Cloak and Dagger, which was also known as Agent X. I would love to see sort of a spy game that sort of played with the genre and kind of made fun with it and celebrated it at the same time. Atari was also known for racing games.
Yeah.
We don't have any out. It's going to change next year. I'm not going to give you anything more than that.
Of course.
But we're going to have some driving games coming back, which I think is cool and important. Some of my favorite games are the 7800 games, which are actually fairly accessible right now. But wouldn't it be amazing if somebody redid Alien Brigade? Right? It's just such a funny game. we probably talk about it too much, but like there's a moment in the game where you're water skiing behind a boat with machine guns shooting aliens on the shore. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And there's this whole like anti-war backstory that was going on that the developers were trying to get out. And I would love to see somebody play with that IP, or Ninja Golf. Ninja Golf is the name alone.
That's right. Yeah, that is I know.
It's a ninja playing golf. Like, we have talked about that. That game is probably the one we talk about internally the most. We have not found the right studio and idea yet.
You got to get it just right, but if you do...
Yeah. And like trying to figure out like the backstory of like, okay, is it a ninja who just loves golf and people won't leave him alone and they keep attacking him on the course? Like, it could be really funny because it was a cheeky game to begin with.
Well, I feel also, given the fact that golf is, in my brain, one of the most silent games to be a spectator for, I think there could be a lot of fun had whichever way you want to go with it. I think there is untapped synergy. I agree. As long as it takes when it's right, I'll be first in line.
Right idea. And of course, the holy grail for a lot of folks is, what is adventure? Like the original adventure game, it was so like that game for the first time you played it was just describes joy of discovery, right? Like. And that's a really special IP, and I'll be curious to see. There's so many things you can do with it, because the dragons all have names, and it's so interesting. And we'll just have to see. Like, we haven't gotten to that right idea yet. And that one's sort of a precious IP. But yeah, there's so much there's so much there. So hopefully, as I said, make sure like when we all leave Atari and we pass it on to the next generation. We've got it back as a game that people associate with really good gaming, really a passion and a love for gaming from the beginning. So we've got a lot of time to get to some of those titles. We're in no rush.
No rush. Here's to another 50 years. Absolutely.
Exactly. Got another 50 years of games coming.
Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. This booth has been full of fantastic discoveries, and thank you for sharing some of them with me and with our listeners.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun talking with you and hanging out with you at the show, and I'm sure we'll spend plenty of time together in the future.
I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, I'm Ryan Woodward at Subliminal Gaming.
I'm Tony Grayson, fearless leader at Summit Sphere.
I'm Brian, the dev on Mirthwood from Bad Ridge Games.
This is Brandon Sheffield, creative director of Necrosoft Games.
My name's David Lowe. I've been working at Atari for the last 3 years, lifelong gamer myself, and
happy gaming.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
and Jacob McCord.
With many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Crossplay Conversations debuts on August 1st with brand new episodes hitting every other Tuesday. Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.